think this messaging is starting to change, but I still think that we have this belief that there's an us them paradigm in mental health, that you are either the person who has mental health challenges or you a person who is like mentally totally fine and you have no challenges, right? Whereas the fact is that just like we all have physical health and things, reasons we need to take care of ourselves physically, we all have mental health and things that knock us on our asses in different ways. And I think the language is starting to change to be more inclusive, but we still, I think just fundamentally, we still have this kind of us them argument.
Dr. Jen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. My first and most important is, how are you doing? Like, actually, for real, how are you doing?
That's my favorite question. I posted that question yesterday on Instagram. I am really tired, Aaron. I think that is how I am doing today. I am just like, full disclosure, I'm just drained. And that's like not bad necessarily. Like I'm super aware of it and I'm trying to figure out what I can do, but there's a combination of just the heaviness of the world, the heaviness of the work I sometimes do, and then my commitment to like all these beautiful events in my life, weddings, bar mitzvahs, fundraisers for friends, like really visits with my family, like really cool stuff, but it requires like leaving the comfort of my home and traveling and doing and being on. And I think combination of all that, I'm tired, but solid. How are you?
I've never had it so good. Never had it so good. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Too many.
I love
too
when people
many,
give me that answer, by the way.
Too many good things going on. A lot of things happening in my life. I recently got married, just went on my honeymoon. My wife is pregnant. Today actually is a really, really special day in my life. It's my sister's birthday. She's no longer with us,
Right.
so it's even more celebratory in that regard. And so,
Important
yeah,
milestones.
right. It's the start of Mental Health Awareness Month, which is very important in our world. And so we'll discuss that as well. But,
Awesome.
Since you're feeling drained,
Yeah.
what is, I'm sure many people sort of feel that emotion or maybe overwhelmed or maybe just, both.
Yeah.
What are you doing actively to take care of yourself that others might be able to implement into their routine or protocol?
Such an important thing for us to think about, right? I think burnout is just in general kind of not talked about enough. And just also like, I specialize in working with teenagers and kids, and we're getting to in New York, at least the last month, 6 weeks of the school year. So this is frequently a time that I feel a little burnt out because everybody's kind of like, oh my God, end of school year. So one thing that I can say is I know that this happens every year. So I know to expect that this is a time where things feel overwhelming, right? So knowing that and kind of that's important for me. Things that I do is I really, really prioritize my routine. So that means I get to my workouts in the morning. I try and focus on making sure I get enough sleep. I try and make sure I'm eating well, and I'm trying to keep things less complicated. Which I think when we hear all of the messaging about like self-care, do this, take care of yourself, do this thing, blah, 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 right? I think ultimately we end up making things so much more complicated than they need to be. And if we go back to basics, how am I sleeping? How am I eating? Am I connecting with the people that fill my bucket versus the people that suck my energy, right? Like if I can go back to those basics, I will be fine. Will I still feel a little depleted because there's just a lot of energy going out because I'm getting kids through finals and into the end of the school year and helping parents not freak out when kids are anxious about camp and all of those other things? 100%. But that is how I'm able to sit here and talk with you and feel okay and like be in it. Is I'm like, all right, this happens every year. What do I do? And I think keeping it simple just makes it easier.
Yeah. I mean, if you spend any amount of time online, which I do quite a bit, maybe too much, you'll find the most exotic fucking morning routines you've ever seen in your whole life. And I'm like, dude, if any normal human had 3.5 hours every morning to do all of that stuff, like
I'd be able to get up at 4 a.m. No, thank you.
I'm so happy for you that you just have like this great casual existence where like 3.5 hours of like 92 ice baths and someone's coming in pouring Saratoga water in between your toes. And it's like, that's awesome. But like
and rubbing your eyebrows.
Yeah, that sounds great. But like the normal human
Yeah.
doesn't need to do that. We have maybe, like, when I have my kid, I'm like, I feel like maybe I'll have like 35 seconds to
Yeah.
figure my shit out before I need to go and take care of him. Like, okay, I take a deep breath, wipe my face, maybe brush my teeth, do a push up. Here we go. On
Yeah.
the move,
Yeah. And
you know?
until you figure out a routine. And then guess what? Your routine will get screwed up. So you got to figure out your next routine. I mean, I think it's a balance of being structured and flexible.
Mm,
Right? I mean, I think that's really what we have to think about. And how I kind of teach it to people sometimes is it's if you're bowling and you're not a really good bowler or you're a kid and you put those bumpers up on the side of the lane, so it has to stay in the lane, but there's flexibility in the lane and you don't want to end up in the gutter, right? I mean, like that's our hope. So we want to have flexibility in the routine. This morning I had to have a really early phone call. I debated get up earlier and work out or get a little extra sleep because I'm really tired. And I voted for sleep. So will that make my day better? I don't know, but I feel a little more alive than I might have had I gotten up that little bit earlier to get the workout in, and I might have had a crash. Because one day isn't going to ruin my workout streak. I mean, if I go to the gym 4 or 5 days instead of 5 or 6 days, I will still be fine.
yeah. Well, you can't tell me that, someone with major body dysmorphia who thinks their arms are going to go skinny if
Right,
they miss workout. But
right,
that's a whole nother diagnosis for myself. But
right.
speaking of working out, when did that become, a habit that you implemented into your life? When did you figure out your routine, like your sort of program that you wanted to do that was good for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I was a dancer. So I was always like someone who moved. It was like very important in my house that we were movers. My mom always worked out a lot. My dad, my brother probably worked out the least of us. Like we were not like a gym family. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. Like it was a different kind of gym, like the 70s and the 80s. We were just outside all the
Mm,
time. Like that's
yeah.
just what we did. My dad works out, he's 84 and he works out 3 or 4 times a week because he's like, I hate it, but I know I have to do it. Like that's just he's like, I hate it. I love it. He hates it. It's just kind of what it is. In the probably so I've always worked out. I've always done different things. I always like to try the newest thing. I was a crazy soul cycle rider for the longest time. I was doing so many different stuff. My current routine is so much more balanced. And I think that developed over probably the last 10 years where I really, maybe 15 even, where I really went like, my workouts have to be priority. They are protected time. I don't do great working out at the end of the day because my schedule just is a little bit more challenging and I don't really like it. I'll do it if I have to, but I'd much prefer to be like done by 8, if not before then. Um, and I think a couple things happened. I had a very badly herniated disc and needed back surgery, so I needed to really figure out what would protect that. Um, in COVID, I really started, interestingly, doing kind of like more high intensity training, interval training, and really found I loved it and kind of was like, okay, how do I integrate that? How do I integrate things that will help my back, yoga, Pilates, whatever? And coming out of COVID, because we couldn't go to the gym, I started walking twice a week with friends. So I get this like beautiful benefit of walking to Central Park. We do a 6 mile walk, between 5 and 6 miles twice a week. I do with two different friends. I get social time. I get the walk in. So I have this like lovely balance of things that um, help my brain and help my body as I'm in my 50s, right? So like I'm also kind of dealing with hormonal changes and all of the other things. So really determining what's the best to keep me at my best as I continue to age became more of a priority than just going to the gym to have a muscle. Like
Mm,
for when I was in college, it was like, how fit can I look? And now it's kind of like I'd like to be able to bend down when I'm 80.
yeah.
It's a very different priority.
Right. Yeah, I used to be a professional wrestler, like WWE, and
Yeah,
so my only goal obviously was to make sure I looked good in my underwear because I was going to be
sure.
in front of people. Now it's like
That's a
this.
fair goal, Aaron. I mean,
It
I
is.
get why you would have to do
And I
that.
was a young man, right? So I wanted to look good for women, to look good naked. I think, when we think about young men, that's a really strong motivator to actually get them off their ass and do something. And we
Yeah,
could talk about that a little bit more, and we will.
yeah,
But now, same idea as you. I just I want to feel good. I want to have mental clarity. I want to be able to do a bunch of stuff with my wife. I want to be able to go still play in my men's league baseball game or go roll jujitsu or have my body be able to do a bunch of different stuff. and that just be a part of my life. I mean, I
Yeah.
started working out when I was 13, and like it is who I am. It's like
Hmm.
outside of my mom and dad, the gym changed my life in the most positive
Amazing.
way out of anything that I've ever done ever.
Right. Right.
And so I couldn't recommend it more to anyone. And the thing about it now is there's so many different options. Like you can go to a workout class. Run clubs are really important for young people now. I've got a friend who started a run club in Dallas, and they've got 300 people that come out on every
Yeah.
Saturday. She started it maybe 6 months ago, and it's like you can go do rock climbing, you can do a martial arts. It's like so many different options. And I hope people don't narrow their focus and just say, "Oh, I have to go to the gym and lift weights." Yeah, lifting
Right.
weights is actually really important for your longevity, but there is a bunch of other stuff you can do to just like be in love with your body and how it moves and like honor it in that way. And I think that's a better way of looking at it rather than like, any like I forcing or hating yourself to work out. That's a motivator too, but I think it changes maybe
Hmm.
intrinsically over time when you see potentially how powerful you are, or how well you feel now, or just like the
Hmm.
habit you've created or the evidence you have that you are this person who can do this thing and you can stack these different habits. And it's just, there's so many wild benefits rather
Yeah.
than just like, "Oh, I couldn't do a bicep curl." Like no one gives a fuck about that. There's so
No.
many different
And no one
things.
cares how many pull-ups you do. I mean, I think that one of the things, like when I have, when I my friends and I talk about it, my clients and I talk about it, and everybody's like, "Oh, I can't go. Like, I just can't get myself there." And I'm like, commit to one day, one day. And I think especially for adults, right? Like socially, depending on where you are, especially, and if you don't have kids or whatever, it's very hard to meet people when you're an adult, right? When we're young, we're like forced together in school. We meet people in college. If we go to college, like there's often ways we meet people. But especially in my profession, I'm in a very isolated profession. I'm a psychologist. I don't necessarily, I now do, but for the first part of my career, I was sometimes the only people I talked to during the workday were my clients, right?
Mhm.
Because that's who I'm with. So I started going to workout classes or creating opportunities to go to classes where I went at the same time all the time and I would see the same people. And then it was like, oh, I see you every week here. We could say hello. Oh, do you want to have coffee? And so some of my adult friends in the last 15 years are people I met working out. And then it was like, hey, do you want to try this other class with me? Or hey, do you want to do this other thing? Like, so we would broaden our each other's horizons in that way. But it started because this was a way to be social and meet people when I didn't have the same opportunities that I might have had when I was younger. And so I think for adults who get afraid of that, it's like just show up. You
Mhm.
don't have to be good at it. Put yourself in the back of the room. Like, no, you don't have to be good at it. If you show up, you'll get better. If you don't show up, getting better isn't an option. So,
Yeah.
if you don't show up for yourself, like none of it really matters.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a we had this saying in call before like exercise basically became a sport. Like you can just be good at exercise now and get paid for it.
Right.
Like it wasn't really a thing back in like long ago. And
Right.
so when we were playing baseball in college and we were working out, we were like, dude, we don't want to be the best at exercise. We just want to be the best at baseball. So we're just going to do this thing, and it's going to help us, and then we're going to move forward. But
Right.
now you can be the best at exercise, and so I guess that's
Hmm.
cool. But
Yeah, it's cool. But like, you know what? Do all of us need to be the best at exercise or do we just
no.
need to like take care of ourselves and feel good?
Right, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, let's make a little left turn here as my
Okay.
great podcasting transition after like 600 episodes.
I like
Let's
it.
talk about mental health.
Let's talk about it.
Off the top, what do you think currently still are some maybe misconceptions about mental health or about how people deal with mental health or mental health issues in general?
So I think that I think this messaging is starting to change, but I still think that we have this belief that there's an us them paradigm in mental health. That you are either the person who has mental health challenges or you a person who is like mentally totally fine and you have no challenges, right? Whereas the fact is that just like we all have physical health and reasons we need to take care of ourselves physically, we all have mental health and things that knock us on our asses in different ways. And I think the language is starting to change to be more inclusive, but we still, I think just fundamentally, we still have this kind of us them argument, like we aren't saying all of us have mental health. What are you doing to protect yours? We're kind of, like we do with stop smoking because it's bad for your lungs and heart and all of these things. It wasn't like, hey, smokers, you're the only ones that need to worry about this. It was kind of like all of us could be at risk. So let's figure this out, or all of us need to work on our heart health. So let's figure this out. So I think that still continues to be a problem. I think we're seeing changes. because younger generations are buying into the idea that everybody is impacted, and that and there's the concern I have there is like the flip side, which is, are we buying too heavily
Mm,
into what's the diagnosis, what's my issue, what's my label, and then a lot of hiding behind that. So I think we had this like kind of one part of us that's like, it's you, and this belief that like mental illness and mental health are kind of the same, when health and illness are diametrically opposed words. So like they aren't the same. But then you have all these young people who Dr. TikTok gives them a diagnosis of X, and they come into my office, like, I have autism. I'm like, really? How did you diagnose that? Well, I watched this TikToker. Now, like, listen, sometimes they're right, but then it becomes, well, I have this, so therefore I can't do
mm,
these other things. So they use it as kind of this shield of existing in the world, right?
yeah.
So like we have to. So I think there's still this challenge of just, you can be a fully functioning, totally okay person who has an illness or has a challenge, that it doesn't have to be um, the defining factor in your life. And it doesn't have to be the thing that prevents your life. And I also think that there is still the ongoing myth that people choose things like suicide, or people choose addiction, when
Mm,
usually it's a side effect of something else,
mm,
or a symptom of something else. I'm probably one of the few psychologists that will actively say out loud, I will lose people to suicide. There's no question. And that's a heartbreaking thing to say out loud, right? I made a commitment to keep people safe and keep people alive. And I work really hard at that. But just like an oncologist is going to lose people even with every effort they put into somebody who has cancer, I'm going to lose somebody to depression or anxiety, because the disease is more powerful than some of us.
mhm.
And that's just kind of what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that, personally, just about my
Yeah.
sister's experience, but maybe we'll get to that in a second. But I
Okay.
want to I want to touch on what you said previously, because I think maybe we're in this like overcorrection point, right?
Hmm.
Because for a long time, it was like, avoid mental health, just shove it down, don't talk about it. You could only feel two emotions: either you're happy or sad, and when you're sad, just try and feel happy, because that's all that life is about. And let's
Put
just
some,
like,
put some dirt on it and shake it
yeah,
up.
like done, finished, okay. And if that person has a mental illness, they're like a crazy psycho person. They need to be wrapped up in a chair. We'll put them in a
Hmm.
building, and then we'll be done with it. And us regular people, normal people, can live here in peace and harmony. So it was
Yep.
like that messaging for a long time. And then, at least like, because I've been involved in this work for like the last 7 years almost, I've seen it drastically change.
Hmm.
Stigma is not totally removed, but like a lot of people are buying into this. And because of the fact that so many people are dying by suicide, I think we don't have it like a choice, like really,
Correct.
because we're just
Yep.
losing so many people, especially young people, at like a rapid rate,
Yeah. It's the
that
second leading
now,
cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds.
yeah, it's just like the most heartbreaking shit you could ever fucking think
Hmm.
about.
Hmm.
And so then we get social media at the same time this is happening, and exactly what you said, like, Dr. TikTok's telling everyone on Earth that they have this attachment theory problem, that they can't leave the house because it'll, like, all this stuff, and like, because it's like, this is a really bad analogy, but I'm going to use it anyways. Okay,
I love
the
it. Go
re
for it.
the reason why dudes still send dick pics is because one dick pic worked one time.
For sure.
And so that's the same thing with this. Like, this self-diagnosis works because it worked one time. They went to a doctor and they were right on cue one time. And so now they have this evidence that it works for every situation
Everything.
all of the time. Sorry about that analogy. I don't know
Yeah, no,
why
but it's true.
why
But
my
it's that,
brain
but
went to
why do
that,
we do
but
some, listen, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? But if I did something once and it worked, I'm going to keep trying it. I'm going to keep seeing if it works. So I actually totally think it makes sense. And sometimes they're right, but sometimes it's just that validation of someone gets it, even if it's some random person on
mm,
TikTok that I don't even know.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, because they're actually feeling some of these things that person portrays, and they're just like, wow, okay, yeah, I do sometimes like feel like that, and sometimes I'm a little anxious about meeting new people or leaving the house or whatever the case may be, and so I probably have this thing.
Right.
And as you know, right, you give people labels when they have a diagnosis, but the label can't be everything. I mean, I learned this as an athlete. If I only think of myself as a baseball player, which I did for a really long time, and that was a
Hmm.
cool identity, it got me a lot of things that I thought that I wanted. But
Sure.
when I stopped, what am I supposed to do? And if I'm only a person who is I am depression,
Yes.
what are you outside of these? There's so many different parts to you that can be
Right.
expressed that you're sort of foreclosing on, and that just hurts your overall ability to flourish in the world.
And the fact is that we don't, all my clients roll their eyes when I'm like, listen, you have to think of mental illness, this that you want to identify as like a physical illness, right? You wouldn't go around going, I am cancer, unless you're talking about your astrological sign. So, right? So why are you walking around going, I am depressed? You're a person with depression, you're a
Yeah.
person, but we've used, and I think that's the other challenge in some of this is that there's a couple things we say that with. I'm diabetic. We use that, right? Instead of like I'm a person with diabetes. But most illnesses we have, we're not like I'm flu. We just don't think of it the same way. So we have to detach from it because when it becomes the identity that you like wrap around yourself like a scarf, if you are limited. And I say this to my clients, I've said this to friends. I'm like, this is a piece of your overall pie. What how do you want your life to look? Like what's the life worth living you want to build for yourself? And what's possible there? And this is going to be something that you carry with you. This is going to be something that happens. And that's okay. Right? It's also something that makes you unique and cool and different and like whatever. And gets you skills that maybe other people might not have. But if it's the only identity you have, then that's a problem. All of us are anxious at different times. And all of us are sad at different times, and all of us are rageful at different times, and every emotion exists on a continuum. So like where are we at the continuum each particular day? And I think that I do think that you're right that we're kind of on like if the pendulum has kind of swung over here, and we'll find a place in the middle. um but I'm just glad we're talking about it. I'm just glad that the new ice bucket challenge that's like raising money for active minds is like hitting fifth graders.
Yeah.
And I'm on I full disclosure, I'm on the board of active minds, so it makes me like doubly and triply happy to see it all happening. But I see my friends with fifth and sixth graders doing an ice bucket challenge for mental health, and I'm messaging them and I'm like, I'm on the board of active minds. Are you talking to your kids about why they're doing this challenge now? And they're like, over and over and over again. Like the little ones just think it's fun to do the ice bucket
Yeah.
challenge,
Yeah.
but they are having the conversations. So it's like that, if we could ask for nothing better than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Active Minds. I was a speaker for them for 3 years or something like
Amazing.
that.
See,
Yeah.
synchronicity.
When they were doing I was doing the VAR training at
Oh,
schools and
yeah,
high
yeah, yeah.
schools and stuff. Yeah. I guess they don't do that anymore. I think MTV like
It's
took it
now
over or
called,
something.
well, yeah, it's now called Ask, but same idea.
Great. Yeah, I think that's like one of the most powerful things I learned, and I think at least the schools that were at, people like actually resonated with the idea. But yeah. Anyways, so then yeah, so I think at some point then we'll find this middle ground. But I think finding the middle ground has a lot to do with the branding. I
Hmm.
know it's weird to talk about mental health in terms of branding, but like people are attached to things that like are cool and are
Yeah.
sexy, and there has to be a difference between mental health and mental illness, like you said. Like some
Hmm.
of these mental illnesses, which my sister had, like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, like severe depression, those are
Hmm.
not the same and can't be put in the same bucket as your girlfriend broke up with you and you're really fucking sad. Like it's
Yeah.
not the same.
Right.
Um,
Despondency is not the same as depression, and they overlap, right?
mm,
Like everything is kind of event. I was talking to a client the other day about it who's like a young man who's really like a true COVID casualty kind of a kid, and just really struggling so many levels. And you're talking about the Venn diagram of all of his emotions, how each one overlaps so much and so many of the signs and symptoms of each thing. But if you only want to be like, I'm a diagnosis, you're limiting yourself. And and that's not to diminish. And his argument was like, I didn't choose this. I didn't ask for me to have some trauma, and I didn't ask for me to, have really bad ADHD. And I said, no one said you chose it. It's your problem to solve. And not everybody can solve the problem, right? Some of it's just bigger than those of us, and that's just true. And some of these illnesses on a continuum are much harder to treat than others, and all of that is true. I'm like, but if it's you, it's yours now. And I think that's where I think, especially for younger people, get stuck because they're like really fucking pissed. Like, I didn't choose this to be my life. And I'm like,
mm.
okay, It's yours though. Like,
Yeah.
what do you want to do about it? You know, like when I worked many, many years ago in the Bronx, all my kids that I worked with used to make fun of me because I used to be like, life sucks. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, we know, Jen, life sucks. And they would like totally make fun of me as they should have. Um, but it's still true. Like sometimes things suck. And what do you
Yeah.
want to do about it?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make it suck any less to do nothing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I relate it to the sports world. It's like the reason now young kids want to work on their mental skills, their psychological skills, because they've seen pro athletes do it and they see it looking sexy. They
Yeah.
see LeBron James meditating on the sidelines before the game. And they're like, oh, well, so when I talk to my 17-year-olds about it, it's not like a far off thing. They're like, yeah, that makes sense, coach. We'll try it. Like the best
Hmm.
players in the world are doing it. And I think that's what needs to happen with mental health. Like it needs to be not this thing that's about the guy who sits in the corner who's crazy that no one talks to. It's about us trying to just be the best we can possibly be in a world that's so unpredictable and uncertain. And what sort of tools do we have? Like what can
Right.
be in our mental health toolkit that we can use when we have that first heartbreak or when we feel super, super overwhelmed because we have 4 tests and a project due tomorrow and we just kind of left it off a little bit because we didn't know how to manage it. It's okay, what can I do right now to sort of get myself centered in this moment instead of totally ignoring the work and just leaving it? Like
Right.
those are the real sort of skills that I consider to be mental health. And I don't know if a lot of people do because it's not like this. It's not like, I don't know, it's not all psychological. There's so much stuff that's in your environment that's like all of that stuff.
But I mean, when you really stop and think about skills that are taught, like I'm going to totally like take myself out of my job, but you think about like the things I teach people, most of it isn't super sophisticated theoretical stuff, right? It's like, okay, so getting out of bed is hard. What if you just sat up,
Mm,
right? What are the things you like to do for fun? Like what are the things when you're feeling good you like to do for fun that you forget to do when you feel like shit? How do we remember? Where's a list you can make for yourself that you like listening to music and you like watching cartoons and you like doing whatever? Where's the list that so you can remind yourself of what those things are when you feel like shit? Because the first thing that goes are the things that tend to make us feel better, right?
yeah.
Because we're not feeling good, so it feels like they feel like a chore. So some of it is like to your point is what are the basics we forget about? And so much of it is really not as sophisticated as we think it has. That doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of sophistication in like figuring out what works for every person, but like for the baseline of us, right, the most of us that are kind of in the middle of the road, kind of dealing with kind of the traditional day-to-day struggles, kind of how are you putting emotional money in the bank every day,
Hmm.
so that which is kind of what you're saying, so that when something happens that's challenging, it's not like the scale tips totally over. Like if every day you can do something that makes you feel good and you weigh the scale so that the scale's like this, then when one bad thing happens, it's not like you're like this. You have a lot of stuff over here, so it's like this. And then you can build it back up. So it's really like how many emotional deposits do you make? And they don't have to be giant.
Yeah.
You went for a nice walk, cool, for 15 minutes,
Amazing.
money in the bank. Right? I talked to a friend, money in the bank. I had the best cup of coffee ever, money in the bank. Like all of that gives you every deposit doesn't have to be $1,000. Like $5 will still get you to a goal.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. There's an amazing, amazing book on habits. Most people refer to James Clear's book.
Hmm.
Not my favorite book, anyways. But my favorite one is this book called Tiny Habits by this man named BJ Fogg.
Okay.
And his main sort of just the thesis of the book is make your habits too small to fail.
Hmm.
So if I relate it to like a workout routine and I want to start working out 3 days a week, 60 minutes, BJ Fogg would tell me, why not do one jumping jack 1 day a week and build from there? Because
Yeah.
anyone can do one jumping jack and you check it off on your list. Week 2, you do 2 jumping jacks. Week 3, because you're giving yourself this long-term horizon, especially if you're a 16-year-old kid. My man, you got time. Let's
Yep.
work on this. So what about 1 year down the road? You're like, you're the fucking man. You're doing CrossFit. You're going in competitions. You met some people that you enjoy. You got a gym bag. You're telling your parents you need some new protein, right? But you basically
Exactly.
just started doing one jumping jack. And if you
Yep.
tell someone that, they're like, dude, that's embarrassing. Why are you doing one jumping jack? That's not a workout.
Hmm.
You're not telling nobody. You're doing
Right.
this because you're trying to build something that's sustainable over the long run. And I found that information and insight from BJ Fogg to be like absolute game changer for anyone who wants to build
100%.
anything.
I think that's right, because if you listen, if you set out a goal and you fail immediately, you're going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is built on the small things. So if you have a long-term goal, you have to break it down into bite-sized pieces, and then you probably have to break down the bite-sized pieces into bite-sized pieces. I didn't like just decide I'm going to work out 5 or 6 days a week and like work out 5 or 6 days a week. I like went once, and then I was like, oh, I can build it into my schedule to add a second one, and now when I like you, when I don't do it, I'm like, I missed a couple days, and literally when I don't do it for a couple days, my husband's like, "Can you please go move your body somehow?" Somehow. He's like, "Please." He's like, "You're driving me bonkers, and I know it's because you have not moved."
Yeah. Out of love.
Back surgery
Sharing
was
out of
hard
love.
in that
Yeah.
in that way. The doctor was like, "You can walk." I was like, "Cool. I'm gonna walk every day," and I couldn't do much more, but I walked every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So,
you specifically work with teens a lot. And so
do.
my question is, should we be worried about them as much as sort of it's being portrayed about? Like, are they struggling as much as we're hearing?
As we're hearing, I mean, yes and no,
Mm,
right? I think yes, we need to be worried about them. I think especially we have not really COVID really messed them up more than any of us really truly still know, I think. And it's still unfolding like flowers. I mean, we're just seeing kind of like what the problems are, what the social situations are, the screen stuff. Um, I don't think we can diminish I mean, everybody's like, oh my God, social media. The fact that everybody's kind of like, oh my God, social media now, and we're all buying into Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation book and like all that stuff. Like, yay, I'm so glad we're doing this. But I've been doing media for a really long time. And I just happened to be looking back at like old emails. I started talking about social media stuff 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever, 14 years ago. We were talking about like how to be smart online and how to be safe online and all of these things. So we knew, we just didn't do anything about it. Like we were not proactive enough. So like
mm,
we as the adults in the lives of these kids, I believe, are partly to blame here because we were all wrapped up in like the excitement of screens and social media and all of that stuff that we didn't stop to think that you're handing an iPhone to your 12-year-old, but you wouldn't give them a key to a car, but you're handing them a full computer. Like, what are you doing? So whatever, we're backpedaling, great. I will get off my soapbox on that. But um, I think the kids are really struggling, but I also think they are so much more resilient than we realize.
mm.
And I think they are also hearing the messaging that they're struggling. So when they're not struggling, they're like, but should I be struggling? Like,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
We're talking about an easily influenced crew of people. So if they're having normal teenage stuff, I mean, I don't know about your adolescence, but I didn't love being a teenager. Like adolescence sucked, right? It sucks. It's horrible. It's kind of meant to suck. You're figuring out who you are. You're figuring out all these things. You're separating from your parents. You've got acne. You're like it's just that, and you have no clue what it is in life, and that's normal, typical teenage development. So now I worry that we're labeling that as kind of pathological and problematic
Mm,
because everybody's so hyper aware of like kids are struggling. So I think they are struggling. I think that COVID had an impact, social media has an impact. Instagram alone asks for unsolicited opinions, but do we really want them? And we really only want them if they're good. But if I'm putting a picture up on Instagram, I'm asking you for an opinion.
yeah.
Automatically, I'm asking you for an opinion. And for a 16-year-old undeveloped brain, what are we doing with that opinion? If I didn't get invited to a party, I didn't know about the party till Monday. When I'm a teenager now, I'm watching it live on Snap and all of the other things that these kids are on. So I do think that it's a very different time and the problems are not as different as we think. They're just amplified, right?
Yeah.
And so thus and then you have and then secondarily to that, you have over functioning parents.
What's that mean?
So that means parents who are really afraid to let their kids experience their feelings, to fall down, to
Mm,
fail. And so I think there is a part of the mental health crisis that is related to, there's like all the discussions of like, do kids have enough grit? So like, I'm saying they're resilient because I do think they're resilient. And many kids don't have grit because parents are busy moving any obstacle out of the way. So they aren't learning that if they fail, they can pick themselves up and be fine. They learn that if they fail, someone else will fix it.
Mm,
And I didn't have that, right? I'm sure you didn't have that. Like you fell on your face. Like your parents might like my parents would talk to me about how I could fix it, but they weren't like marching into the school and demanding that my teacher change my grade. Like if I didn't earn the grade, I didn't earn the grade.
mhm.
They didn't get me 17 different tutors to get me the grade. So
Yeah,
so kind of over functioning, kind of over accommodating parenting also weirdly makes kids more anxious because they don't actually learn that they're capable.
yeah. Yeah. I remember, like, to sort of stamp your point home, this moment in my childhood like really really changed me. I didn't know it then, but
Mhm.
like now I know it. I was 10 years old and I was playing on this baseball team and I wasn't very good at baseball yet, but I just loved it. And so my parents signed me up for everything and I wasn't getting a lot of playing time like halfway through the season. And so I came home to my mom and dad, who are the most incredible people in the world. If you say yes and support your son to go be a professional wrestler, then you're going to support pretty much fucking anything. So,
I
but
think that's fair.
yeah, 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 son, go run around in your underwear. We'll tell people at dinner parties what you do for a
Right.
job. Anyways,
We'll cheer you from the rooftops. Yep.
yeah. So, anyways, I'm 10. I'm in love with baseball. It's the fucking best sport in the world, still to this day. Think so. Anyways, but I wasn't getting a lot of playing time, and I didn't wonder why. I wasn't really sure why. Other kids were better than me, but I just didn't feel that way.
Right.
Um, and I was like, I'm 10. I should be playing. So I come home to my parents, and I'm like, hey, I want to quit this team. I don't want to play anymore. And my dad was like, what do you mean? You want to quit? You said you committed to this. You signed up. We're going to finish the season. How can you earn more playing time? Or how can you learn the lesson from this? But you're not going to quit. We signed up. We did this thing. We're going to
Mhm.
support you all the way through, but you're not going to just give up. And, he said that in a longer speech to a 10-year-old, and my mom was there, whatever, whatever, whatever. And that moment in time completely changed me.
Yeah.
Completely changed me. They gave me the support. If I fell down, they'd be there to catch me and
Yeah.
tell me to get my ass back up. But there was no quitting. There was no giving up because you weren't getting your way. You weren't getting
Right.
playing time as a 10-year-old on a baseball team that didn't fucking matter. But it was going to
Yep.
prove to you that you could do something hard and keep showing up and keep showing up. And I did. And baseball became, one of the most important things of my whole life. Still, to this day, I coach
Mhm.
17-year-olds. So I see them, struggling through these things that are happening. And I think just that's a really important piece. And so whether you would learn that from a sporting environment, from, I don't know, potentially in a religious community or another
Yeah.
sort of group, I mean, that's the cool thing about social is if
Yeah.
we're talking about the things that are hard, you can also find people that
For
really connect with you. And then maybe you meet in real life. That would be
Right.
also
There are
awesome.
great things to social media. Like I'm not a person who slams social media as bad. Like I think there are, especially for kids who are out, like kind of on the like the fringy kids, like they find communities that are amazing
Hmm.
online, and I think that's so important, right? Like so important. But I do think there's such a like I'm thinking of my own like growing up, and my parents also were kind of like, you got to do your thing, and one of the things that I look at how I was raised and like what I teach in my practice and there one of the things we talk about is like consultation to the patient, like how am I guiding the patient to do what they need to do, make that phone call, send that email, talk to that teacher, versus when do I have to consult to the environment, right? And I think that's the argument in parenting all the time. If you really think about it, it's kind of like when I was a theater kid, I was like this interesting conundrum of like sports and theater. So like I would be like changing into my ballet clothes, like from soccer practice in the back of the car. Like I was that kid. And in high school, I did a lot of theater and I played softball. And like I just, I was a pretty well rounded kid in that space. And I remember my junior year, like I was trying out for all the theater things, and then we got a new theater guy, and he promised me a lead in the show for my senior year, and didn't give it to me.
Hmm.
And I went and talked to him, and nothing happened. And my parents guided me on what I should do, and ultimately they had to come in and talk to somebody because it was an environment that was more powerful than I was, right? And so I think, but they didn't. That wasn't their first reaction.
Right.
Their first reaction was, well, what can you do, and who can you talk to, and what can we do to support you in that? Consultation to me, right? And role play it and talk it through and do all those things. And then when I really couldn't do more than I did, it was okay, well, we're going to come in and help you. And I think we are doing it the opposite way now.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't have learned how to stand up for myself or how to ask for what I need because someone else and I probably would have felt like I couldn't do it because they didn't believe that I was capable. And so it's an important question of like, can you guide versus can you do?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really hard one for a lot of people.
Yeah. What else should we be focusing on in terms of trying to help our teens?
Talk less, listen more,
Mhm.
right? We talk too much from a talker. We talk too much. We talk too much. And so there's that. I think we have to pay better attention to those subtle moments. Like you're coaching 17-year-olds, right? There are probably moments like one of your players is like lingering back and kind of walking near you and kicking dirt and maybe not really saying anything, but he's kind of like those are moments they want to talk to you, but they literally cannot
Yeah.
look at you and be like, "Hey coach, I got to talk to you about something."
Right.
So you and because again, sometimes because we're all so focused on our phones or so focused on something else, we miss the my dad used to call them door lingering moments, right? Like the
Mm.
hanging at the door of his study, like, what do you want? But like, do you want to come in and talk to me? Kinds of things, or like hanging in the kitchen with my mom when she was maybe, I don't know, making a grocery list, but I would be like hanging there. And if no one noticed, I'd leave, right? But if someone said to me, Jen, what are you doing? What's up? I could be like, oh, so my friend said this weird thing to me, like, because kids don't always know because they're afraid they're going to disappoint their parents or they're so like if you notice that linger, ask,
Mm.
hey man, seems like you want to talk to me about something.
Yeah.
What's up? Because sometimes they just need to be seen. Kids really just need to be seen. And if you notice a difference, if being able to just be like, you haven't seen it yourself, you good? You have done talks in different environments. Like everybody just, you said, I'm going to ask you a real question. How are you really? That question gets people talking because most of us ask that question as a blow off.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super, super valuable. Like I can just picture kids that I've been around just like kind of just well, coach, like they're in their head, they're like, coach, please talk to me. Coach, I'm right here.
Yes.
Coach, 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 Aaron,
Yep.
but they're just like hover. It's so right. And
They hover.
and man, if you're like, I like coaching for me, I take it as a huge responsibility, especially young men. And I care deeply, deeply about young men and them flourishing and becoming really, really positive men
Hmm.
in this world. And I think having a role model is like number one thing for that. Not that I'm a role model for every man that I meet or young man that I meet, but I try my best. And
But
so,
you're a man who was in a powerful sport talking about mental health.
mm,
That in and of itself, and who's not, and who's like fit and works out and strong and blah blah blah, and not afraid to talk about mental health. Period. That
yeah,
makes you a bit of a unicorn in a world where men are still not always encouraged to be talking about that, right? I knocking wood, I believe that's also changing,
yeah,
which is so beautiful and so amazing. But to your, as you said, where are the role models? Where's the sexiness about mental health?
mm,
Um, and we're seeing changes of it. Even in the news media, NBC has a weekly, they do like weekly streaming news. Every one of their shows in the weekly streaming for NBC News Daily has a mental health segment, either a parenting segment or a mental health segment. Every one.
really
That's
good.
never happened before. And I've been doing
Yeah,
this a long time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, anything else on that regard of helping teens, or should we move on?
Um, oh, we could talk about teens
I mean,
forever,
we're not
but
moving on past teens, but different
we
question.
we could talk about teens forever. So we can, I mean, I think that I think in my final thoughts about it, like I think we discredit how capable they are and just miss the signs that they need us, right? Like we either kind of we kind of push them, oh, you're 17, you should be able to do all of this by yourself, but they still need you as parent or they still need you as a trusted adult. And I think that role is so important. And if you have that kind of space in the life of a teenager, like maximize it, right? Check in, even if they don't take it personally when they don't text you back. I mean, my nieces and nephews, like, leave me on red all the freaking time. It's just what is. But like, I check in and they'll tell me, like, Aunt Jen, we just appreciate that you like checked in on us. Like, we know we didn't text you back. Okay. Fine. Did you see it? And did you know I was asking? Yes. I'm like, it'd be nice if you texted me back.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I just forgot. Okay. So I think we can't take it personally, because teenagers by nature are kind of assholes, and very self-focused. Um, but if you stay present, and the other thing is they're always listening. Even when you think they're rolling their eyes at you and you think they're not listening to you and you think they're not taking anything in, they could repeat to you verbatim what you just said.
Mm,
They're taking
interesting.
it all in.
Yeah. I'm fascinated to think what life will be like for my kid in 16,
Hmm.
16 years.
Me
Because
too.
times are rapidly changing. I was like having a conversation with my wife about will he even need, because we're having a boy, will he even need a driver's license? Will everyone be driving self-driving? Everyone be in self-driving cars? She's
Right.
like, no, I don't think it'll happen in 16 years, maybe 30 years, But like those some interesting things, and like it's not like social media is gonna. I mean, it might change in 16 years. I don't know if like it's gonna be sort of the consumer content economy that it is now, because it's always
Right.
like rapidly evolving. So it's just very interesting where life will be at,
Yeah.
especially for someone who makes their money online. So I don't know where uh,
You're like,
where
I
it's
hope
gonna
it
go.
still works there.
But I think people will always be interested, especially as things get more automated, interested in real humans having real conversations. I mean, that's been a job forever. So
Yeah.
I think we're
I
all
mean,
right.
there are definitely people like in my field that are like, oh my God, we're going to be obsolete. I'm like, we're never going to be obsolete. Like, we can do everything online now. We learned that during COVID. Like, why it took COVID to teach us that, I don't know, but how great that we know that. But I can tell you more of my people want to be in office than they do want to be online.
Mm, yeah.
They want to sit in my office with me. They don't want to have a screen in between us, which thank God, because I'm a better therapist in person than I am a therapist on a screen at this point.
Yeah, they want to feel your energy. I mean, that's such a
Hmm.
powerful mover. I can somewhat feel that someone cares. Like I do most of my podcasts on Riverside, and I
Right.
like it. But like I can feel, like really feel into like a moment with someone. Like we're getting a
Yeah.
coffee, there's deep eye contact.
Well,
Maybe
you
if I'm with,
see the whole body.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? Like, I think the funniest moment after COVID was one of my clients came in and I would have thought she was 5'8". She was 5'2". But online I only saw from here up, and just the way she would sit very straight and I remember she came into my office and I was like, okay, that is not what I thought. And we totally cracked up about it. And I think, but all of these cues you miss. I don't know. Is your leg shaking while we're talking? I don't know. I can't see that on a screen. I can't tell it if, there's a twitchy thing going on over here, or maybe there's like tons of garbage. Like what I love when I do it with kids and young people on the screens is I get to see their rooms and I get to see what's going on in their house. I get a little bit of insight there, which is
Mhm.
great. But I don't, I admit, you can only see up from my kind of just below my chest plate up. Like you have no idea what's going on the bottom. Am I nervous? Am I anxious? Am I ripping paper in my lap? And what am I
Mm,
doing? And
yeah.
so, from my point of view, therapy is not just from your neck above, like it's your whole body. I mean, before I became a psychologist, I was a dance movement therapist because I believed in the fact that your body, the mind body connection was such an important component of things. And it was a way I could like take my love of dance and therapy and kind of put them together. So I still use that. Like what's going on in people, like what's going on in their bodies is just as important
Yeah.
as what's going on in their heads.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, so
But,
speaking of young men, let's talk about
hmm.
this show,
Adolescence.
Adolescence. Let's talk about that. I'm not going to say anything about my thoughts about it. I'll just let you sort of take over and
Oh,
what
I'd love to hear your thoughts about it.
oh, I definitely have some. But what do you think about it? About the show in general? Is it depicting something that's important to think about, or what's going on with you there?
Um, let us all remember it is still a TV show, right? So, like, fundamentally, there. I think though that it is highlighting a very important space for young men because there still is, you know, there's a reason for the popularity of people like Andrew Tate. There's a reason for the popularity of this kind of misogynistic space. I think that we, have course corrected in everything being about kind of white men in a lot of ways. But then when we course correct, the people coming up behind that do ultimately feel disenfranchised, whether or not that's good, bad, correct, incorrect. I'm not judging, but I think, what I hear from a lot of young men is where are we in any of these equations? What's our role? And, for a long time, there is the belief that kind of, if you are a white man, that's the end all be all, and you are going to have all of the things. And I think that you have these young men who are lost and are still taught, like to tie in with our whole conversation, taught that like emotions are bad and you shouldn't express them and it's weakness. And, if you're an artsy person, like there's something wrong with that. Like you're supposed to be a man and be tough and yada yada. But and I think the show depicts a lot of that in kind of real subtle and very in your face ways. But what I kind of think I appreciated the most about the show is that they highlight that it's not just one system, right? The school system isn't doing great because we're overtaxed and we are missing, and these kids are falling through the cracks that might be struggling. Parents may not have the resources or the knowledge that they might need, the messaging they are getting. What are they doing at night? Who are they following online? What are they, and these are young, a kid in the show, right? He's 13 and probably on platforms that he's not even really supposed to be on at 13, and who knows how long he's been, right? So it's a much larger systemic failure, and it's a TV show that has to highlight how bad it is, right? So like, do I think all boys are in that space? No, but I have heard from a lot of parents, and both professionally and personally, about their boys very much feeling like, well, where do I fit? And it's not fair. And while I think it's easy to roll our eyes at that, I think we also have to listen because they're suffering and we can't diminish the suffering that is happening on. And so I do think, listen, it's got people talking about what's going on, right? And to me, shows like that can get people talking and make it look and have it be kind of realistic. It's doing its job.
Yeah. Would you recommend school like they're putting it in schools in the UK, they want kids to watch it. Would you recommend that happening in the United States, or how do you feel about that?
I think the only way to really do that is if you have a very strong ability to have like a curriculum around it. And I
Mm,
know that sounds like weird, but that you need to have the support staff to be able to have those conversations afterwards, because who knows what that could trigger. I mean, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And my fear would be that schools are so taxed already. Do they have the resources to have those conversations in meaningful ways?
yeah.
And I'd
Yeah,
almost rather parents watch it with their kids than
mm,
watch it in a school, and like kids maybe to send home like, here's a talking guide to watch this with your kids, and
right.
have parents watch it with them, because that's really where those conversations matter most.
Yeah.
What do you
I
think? Do you think it should be in school?
No, I do not. Unless exactly what you say happens. Like
Hmm.
because I just feel like the vibe around it's being treated as some sort of documentary,
Yeah.
and it's not real.
Yeah.
There are almost zero cases of 13-year-old boys stabbing girls. Like it's a fictional character. Now there is a lot of stabbing violence in the UK. That was the basis of the show, but it originally had nothing to do with the incels and Andrew Tate and all these sorts of things. But since that's such a popular topic, they transitioned to that. And so it's so well shot and so well, like everything about it is just gorgeous,
Yeah.
that it can be viewed as this like perfectly depicted documentary about someone's real life. And if you
Yep.
show that to a young person without really telling them like what is actually happening, they're going to think this is some sort of cautionary tale or a real thing, and maybe it's going to help or hurt, but like they're just like in the deep end trying to figure it out themselves, which is where they
Hmm.
already are about all of these sorts of things. And also the idea that incels is for a 13-year-old boy is sort of ridiculous. Like no 13-year-old boy is like voluntarily like are
Celibate. Right.
involuntarily celibate. They're just like 13. Like they're
Right.
just trying to figure some stuff out. They don't even know like when their
They don't have a lot
wiener.
of game. Most
They have no
13-year
idea.
olds don't have a lot of
Like
game.
when their wiener gets hard, they're like, "Oh, do I have to pee, or is this what's happening here?"
Right.
Like
Right. Yep.
like maybe now it's a little bit more advanced because pornography is so accessible, which is like
Hmm.
another part of this thing about
Yeah.
young men that we can touch on. And yeah, Andrew Tate is the absolute most horrific role model that we could ever be propping up ever on planet Earth. He's like
Hmm.
the most disgusting, whimsical caricature of a real man that I've ever
Yeah.
witnessed in my whole life. That but there's things that he does that young men are attracted to, and we have
Sure.
to accept that. He has hot chicks around him. He's good, looks good. He's a fighter. He's got a ton of money. People follow him. He's got hot cars. Like, and so what sort of
Hmm.
messaging can we apply to get these real better role models out there that are going to give young boys a real vision for their future that's actually graspable? And
Yeah.
then, like, on a societal level, of course, like you noted, like if we tell all men that their masculinity is toxic no matter what they do, then of course they're going to, do these sorts of things that aren't conducive to a flourishing society. But also in regards to the show, like if all men are toxic and we do is violent things, then why isn't there like an uptick in extreme violence in our culture? Why isn't
Right.
a young man walking around punching granny in the face or flipping tires? We're not, because there's this other hypothesis that I think is actually happening. It's called the male sedation hypothesis,
Hmm.
and young men are being sedated into not going out into society. And
Right.
that's what's happening via pornography, via the AI girlfriends, being all these sorts of things. Like
Yeah.
one of the strongest motivators for men is the wanting to go get laid. Like
Yeah.
I know that sounds crass,
No,
but
I
like
think that's just honest.
it gets us in the gym. It gets us like to shower, to have personal
Hmm.
hygiene, to clean up ourselves, to figure out how we can talk to people in real life. And it gets us, the most important part, it gets us to know. So we
Yep.
understand that we can told no over and over and over and over again, and we're going to be fine.
Yep.
We just
Yep.
walk away. Cool, all good. Thanks for the chat. Appreciate you. And then eventually we get the yes, and we apply that to all areas of our life. And
Right.
so, since we can have ultimate access all the time to pornography, um, why would I fucking leave? Like
Right.
when I was in college, we had access to pornography, but not in the same way that we do now. And I can't
Right.
imagine if I was a person now. I don't know even if I would have left the house. Like I'm
Right.
being very honest about it.
For
Like
sure.
you're getting
Yeah.
access to the most beautiful, gorgeous women in the world who will do literally whatever you can think about,
Right.
and it's right there. And
Yep.
so these things they absolutely play a role in the sort of male sedation hypothesis. And so what we need, again, most importantly, is role models, a good vision for
Hmm.
the future, some societal changes, like an actual uplifting and encouraging of men. I don't think empathy is a zero-sum game, right?
Hmm.
When civil rights happened, it didn't hurt white people, right? When we gave gay marriage, it didn't hurt heteronormative normal marriage. So when we talk about women doing unbelievably incredible right now, that's a celebration. That's a fantastic achievement. We don't need to throw them in the fucking back seat now. We just need to have empathy for everyone. Sorry for getting so fired up about
No,
this thing,
but
but
it's true. But
um
I agree with you. And I think the thing to kind of add to that is there's room for all of us,
mm-hmm.
right? There's room for all of us. Like if someone else is opening a practice that's similar to mine, I might feel threatened by that, but that's a me problem. That's not a them problem. Like that's a, well, why am I threatened by someone else doing something I'm doing because there's a need for that person, right? Like my success isn't unless I'm really bad at my job is not predicated on their success. Like my success is my success and I will continue to have success as long as I'm fighting and working hard and doing the things. And I think what we end up having is, well, you opened up next door and you open the same business as me, so you're taking my business. Well, maybe their business is just better, right? Like maybe they're giving a better product. But my guess is that if I have a product and you have a product and they're equally good, someone's going to like mine better, someone's going to like your better. And but we're both going to have customers.
Yeah.
And I think there is the belief that every product is equally good, so therefore you can't open up next door to me because you're going to take my business. What? Like there's room. And I
Yeah.
think that's where I get like flustered and I notice it in myself. I notice it when I'm like, well, why'd that person get that and not me? And I have to stop. I'm like, that's an ego, that's a me issue. That's not about like maybe they just were more available. I don't know, right? Like so it's an interesting thing. And I think with porn, part of what feeds this issue too with guys is that there is the internalized belief like that this is what sex is supposed to be or this is
Mm,
what relationships are supposed to be. So then when that does not translate to the real world, I do think it adds to some anger and some frustration and
yep.
some and turned inward, right? Shame, embarrassment, less feelings of less than self-esteem, self kind of awareness issues that then fuel the frustration and the anger, right? So then you get that to me is where some of that misogyny also ends up starting from, you know, and kind of that whole 80-20, whatever rule that they talk about in adolescence of just like, you know, 80% of women only like 20% of men. Whatever. It's like, I don't know that I believe that, but I believe that that's espoused well, right? Because here you have kind of, I'm stuck in front of my computer. This is what I'm watching. And then how does that translate to the real world? And
Yeah.
it doesn't translate well.
Yeah, on Tinder, basically, if you have 50 women,
Mm-hmm.
um, 46 of those women, and you have 50 men, 50 women, 46 women will like the same four men. So
Right.
the four men are just, they're crushing it. And then you have, 46 dudes for four other women. And so there
Right.
is like this weird dichotomy. It's like, when you think about it, who actually wants the most emotionally mature, economically viable young men? It's that women do,
Right.
right? So if we want better men, we have to become better men. And that's
Yeah.
like part of the whole deal is that regard. And like one of the most alarming stats I heard, I think from Scott Galloway, was that 51% of aged 18 to 24 males in the US have never asked a woman out in person,
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all.
you know?
That doesn't.
And yeah.
But you want to know what's funny? So when I met my husband in 2006, five, six, six, we didn't have all like Tinder and Hinge. We didn't have all of that, but we had Match and JDate and eHarmony, like all of the websites, right? So we met on a dating website, and it was a marketing guy, and he used to make all different profiles with all like just to see what would get him in, like, kind of before we were doing this kind of research, he was just doing like sociological research. So he
Yeah.
would have like, he put up like really gorgeous guy with like a profile that was like, I'm a finance dude. I mean, I live in Manhattan, right? I'm a finance dude, but I'm kind of an asshole, like this whole thing. And he would get like a million things. And then he would put up a picture of himself and, you know, or somebody who's like a little bit less broy, not for lack of a better way to put it, and a more softer thing, and wouldn't get the same amount of responses. He said it was fascinating to
Yeah.
see what the attraction was for different people and where they would he was the same person behind them, but he was like screwing around and like doing his own little sociological experiment. He's like, it's kind of fascinating
Very
to
interesting.
see. And that was what, 19 years ago at this point,
Yeah.
and that's still 17 years ago. I don't know. I've been married 19 years ago. Math, not
Yeah.
my thing today.
Cuz
Um,
like one of the things that makes men attractive to women is not, of course, their looks, right? You have to be physically attracted to the person you want to
mhm.
spend the rest of your life with, but that goes away, right? What like gets men attracted to women is like their ability to express excellence in some sort of way.
Mhm.
Like, and that's really hard to know behind a screen. Like, how do
Right.
you know that I'm really good with my hands, or I'm like this fucking really good plumber? I'm an electrician that's just mastered. Like, those skills are
Yeah.
attractive to women because they see that as something like that's the ability to provide. You can do stuff. Like, you have a
Yep.
passion. Like, those things are attractive to women. But on Hinge or Tinder, if you're like an okay looking guy, like it's
Right.
very, very, very challenging for that to be put across. And so we have to create environments where men and women can express their excellence. Like,
Yeah.
what if you're, does a mediocre or attractive women? I don't even know if that sounds right, but like, you also want to be able to express the things that you do really well. What if you're funny and you bring peace and you love to
Yeah.
travel and all these sorts of things that can't be seen if I just see one picture of your face on the internet? And so, like, getting
Right.
back to going to bars and meeting people at run clubs and
Yeah.
all these sorts of things, and not being afraid to ask someone out and being able to learn the rejection. Like, hey, I'm not interested. No, thanks. All right,
Mhm.
cool. Sounds good.
But
All right.
also you know, if we kind of go back to where we started, right? In some of those things, you're starting from a place of common connection,
Mm,
right? Because like, I already know you like to run because we're in run club
yeah.
together. So there is already one piece of common ground that you have found, which I think there's something powerful in that, right? Like
Yeah.
if I meet you at a bar, it's great that I can meet you at a bar, but I also don't know anything about you other than you like to have a beer, right? Like, but if I'm meeting you at I don't know, a comedy night or a whatever, like there is one thing in common already,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool when you can stop and think about that, right? That there's like, we have one basis of common ground. It might not turn into anything, but maybe it turns into a friendship, or maybe it turns into something else. So I'm with you. I think kind of in real life interactions, like I'm glad to see people going back to those, even though they're really hard.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Jen, I could literally talk to you for probably another 12 hours, but I'll I'll uh, I'll let you go on this.
We
But
can
is
do
there?
it again. We can do it
Yeah,
again.
please, please. Is there anything that you want to mention that you feel like is important before we wrap up here?
All right. So we started by saying, right, Mental Health Awareness Month. So my goal for everybody in Mental Health Awareness Month is that every day everybody has to check in with themselves, kind of do a little read of like how asking themselves that question, like how am I today? And and if the answer is like I'm kind of off or I'm not feeling great or whatever, you have to identify one thing you can do for yourself that day. And
Mm.
that may mean texting a friend. That could mean laying on your couch and watching an hour of TV, not 17, just one, um, maybe two. Getting outside, but like something that will build your mental health. So it's like a personal check. And again, it doesn't have to be an hour long. It can be a 15-minute thing. Check in. What do I need right now? Oh, I'm going to go take a really hot shower. Or, oh, I'm going to do a 5-minute meditation. Or, oh, I'm going to text my friend to check in or whatever. But like every day for the 31 days of May. That's my goal for everybody, to just have a mental health check-in for themselves.
Nice. I love that because I'm purposely putting this episode out on the first week of June so
Okay.
that everyone who gets all of the mental health information for May now can continue doing it in June.
In June.
And
Perfect.
so it's just part of their life because, social media in a really good way is going to be flooded with a lot of really good information. And hopefully you apply it to your life. And then you hear and watch this episode right now in the first week of June. And you're like, cool, I'm going to keep doing what Dr. Jen just said. And now it flows into July and August and September and
Right. Well, and
October and boom, boom,
how
boom.
many days does it take to make a habit, right? Like if you do it every day, it becomes a habit that you do. And
Yeah,
then it just becomes part of your everyday routine. So
absolutely.
no big deal.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Jen, thank you really much. Appreciate you. Appreciate your work.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
chatting
you.
with me. And yeah, see you soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.